extrinsic motivation. Is it really all it's cracked up to be? We're going to start with the definition of extrinsic motivation, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what happens to intrinsic motivation if and when extrinsic motivation is misapplied. And then we're going to talk about, well, practical, applicable stuff. In other words, how to avoid some of the pitfalls. Look, if you like this approach where we look for things that you can do immediately and also talk about why they will probably work, please like or join us by subscribing or forwarding this on. Look, the definition of extrinsic motivation is doing anything because of an external reinforcement. When I was in high school, I know, about a bazillion years ago, there was a state-assembled panel of judges who would decide whether or not you were worthwhile developing as a singer. And the highest rating they would give you was something called a command performance. The first one I got was based on extrinsic motivation. I really, really wanted this one thing that proved I could sing. But the other ones started to be more intrinsically motivating. I wanted to maintain a level of excellence. But when I got the exact same extrinsic reward, even though I'd increase my level of intrinsic motivation, well, after a couple of years, I actually fell down a notch, which gets us to our second point. If you apply an extrinsic material reward for an activity that's already been executed because that person was already intrinsically motivated, well, it doesn't double down on the motivation. It can actually begin to erode it. Now, let me give you a very practical example. Currently, and we're in the last quarter of 2022, there's a move on to try and coax and tempt folks back into shared working environments, otherwise known as offices. So let me get this straight. You have folks on your staff who are working well, being productive, and generally more enthusiastic about their commitment to work, and you want to mess with that? It turns out that using extrinsic rewards or temptations, so far, it's been a resounding failure. Oh, I get it. For example, I'll bet that when you were a kid, you might even have had dessert held out as a reward if you ate your veggies. Anyone else getting the feeling that the employee dinner smacks of being treated like you were 6 years old? I've gotten a bit ahead of steam on this one. There'll be a video on the back to office movement and what I think it's doing to people, to their self-worth, etc. Anyway, to get back to the topic of motivation, point 3 is when we come to potential pitfalls. Okay, so suggestion number 1, remember where to set the bar. Don't go all sumptuous dinners or lunches where you never provided them before in exchange for asking your people to reinvest in a commute if you haven't actually asked them if doing all of that would help to ease the commuting pains. 2, let's try to avoid the over-justification effect. You see, it turns out that if people are already intrinsically motivated to do something, adding unrequested material extrinsic rewards can begin a cycle of why do this without the material reward? And I guess it doesn't matter whether I want to do it or not, as long as they reward me. And look, realize along those lines that extrinsic rewards have a limited shelf life. So what are you going to do when the value runs out? You see, as a team leader in the project environment, you're often in a position where you have many social and interpersonal rewards available to hand out, but not always a boatload of material extrinsic rewards. And you know what? It turns out this might not be a bad thing. Obviously, we do want to be able to give out certain levels of it, but keep in mind a couple of things. Whether you decide to approach motivating your team by appealing to their intrinsic motivational factors or providing extrinsic motivational rewards. What works for one people will not necessarily work for anybody else in quite the same way. Oh, sure, there is that whole issue of social proof, and we want to be a part of the team, but ultimately it gets down to the same fundamental truth. Treat each person as they wish to be treated, and what you learn and apply from this additional exploration into the subject of motivation will be more powerful. And you'll enhance the level of trust with the folks on your teams. And sometimes it's that team identity that provides just a wee bit of extrinsic motivation. This video was brought to you by the Leadership Driven Project Management Academy group on Facebook. Why don't you join us there? I'm Kimi Hirotsu-Zimski. Thanks for joining us for this, and look forward to seeing you again soon.